I am a teacher. And when I teach, I see minds opening to the incredible potential of human possibility against the forces of ignorance and closed-mindedness. Of all the threats facing our humanity right now, and there are a lot, racism, to me, concentrates and exhibits the worst parts of our humanity, of our ignorance, of our cruelty. So, when I teach, I work to dismantle and combat racism. Through a discussion of the great works of literature, we can open our individual perspectives. We can, together, come to appreciate the art that rises from oppression. The essence of my work is intensive workshops here, actually right up the road in Camden. In those studies, we look at writers like Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, James Joyce, William Faulkner, Marcel Proust, Zadie Smith, Ralph Ellison. And when those writers choose to address racism, to address oppression directly, they create a space for conversations that help all of us understand better what it is to struggle against oppression. My first teaching job. I applied for my dream job at the Athenian School in Northern California. And it's one of those schools, it's beautiful both in setting and intent and in dynamic student body. When I went for my interview, I was nervous, a little bit like right now. And they asked me, so could you teach a seminar on the Harlem Renaissance? And I said, of course I can do that. If they had asked me if I would teach physics, I would have said, yes, of course, I can do that. And then I got the job. And over the summer, I began to prepare the course. And suddenly, anxiety met my enthusiasm. Who am I, white, middle-class literature nerd, to offer these jewels of Black culture? Well, I'd said I would do it. So I threw myself into the works. The transcendent fiction of Zora Neale Hurston, the incredibly sublime art of Aaron Douglas, the complex essays of W.E.B. Du Bois, and those works carried me in their power and provocation. So I was ready. And then I arrived for the first day at school, and I faced this class of very savvy, mostly Black 16 and 17-year-olds. And I started to introduce my content. And I quaked. I said, you know, this is weird. I think I really said that. That as a white person, I'm standing up here to teach you about Black culture. And that's perpetuating a history of oppression. But what? What right did I have? These works moved me. They are so powerful. And they inspired me, and I want to share that inspiration with you. Luckily, one of the students who I came to know, Antoine, as a brilliant thinker and political activist, he said, Toby, it's cool, just go ahead and teach. And I did. And the journey that we went on together with that first class showed me how by encountering our positions, our understanding of racism, our experience of oppression honestly and with kind of a generosity, we can do so much as a group, opening up all of our perspectives and our understanding. Now, when I teach a work by a person of color, I still feel that same discomfort. And it's a discomfort that I don't feel when I teach Homer, for example, even though I'm not male, nor blind, nor ancient Greek. I welcome that discomfort. That discomfort reminds me that I always need to interrogate my own inherited racism, that we are not in a post-racial world, that we still live under only partially submerged systems of inequity and imbalance, and that I always need to be humble in this practice. I also lean on how these works impact people from all backgrounds, giving us a forum to talk openly about racism, unpacking the layers of ignorance and awkwardness. Toni Morrison. We'll hear more from her in a while. When people come to my studies, they think that they're going to learn about great literature, about these great books, and they are. But they may be surprised at what these books are going to teach them. As I walk a group of, for example, mostly white readers through Toni Morrison's incredible Beloved, we struggle together. We struggle with the agony of the characters experiencing sexual violence and torture. We struggle with our own inherited racism. We struggle to put language to the sense of helplessness and injustice that we feel in response to the book. We struggle to bridge the gap between self and other. But in Toni Morrison's incredibly capable hands, we come to some greater understanding. I never realized how I don't know the people, I don't really see the people that come and work for me every day, reflected one woman from Delhi in our study of Beloved. They arrive every morning or at first thing in the morning, and they leave late at night, and I know nothing about their families. They are like slaves in my home. Today, I am talking about specifically Black writers, because I want to place our conversation in an identifiable context. Now, that may surprise you, as I'm not obviously a writer. I'm not obviously Black. That should surprise you. So, I realize, though, as a white person, it is so damn important that I learn to talk about racism, and that I work to at least glimpse what that experience is like. Now, if you are a person of color, you probably already know a little bit about the experience, but when we all come together in mixed groups, in reflection of the literature, we create a greater understanding. We start to dismantle racism, one book at a time. Good fiction. Good fiction wraps us in the skin of another's experience. And from there, I can start to understand an experience that's very different from mine, both in history or in gender or an ethnic or national experience. Good fiction opens the imagination to the world of others. What it leads to when I'm encountering a work and when I'm deeply held in, for example, Toni Morrison's craft, is it increases my own ability to be empathic and to greater confidence in calling out racism in myself and in others. It also helps me to start to understand the white privilege that I live under. And it enriches my mind with incredibly dynamic narratives. And when you talk about these things with others, it's pretty powerful.
Risky, thought Paul D. Very risky. For a used-to-be slave woman to love anything that much was dangerous, especially if it was her own children she had settled on to love. The best thing he knew was to love just a little bit. So when they broke its back or shoved it in a crocus sack, well, maybe you'd have a little love left over for the next one.
That's Beloved, from Beloved by Toni Morrison. And when you read this in the context of the work as a whole, there is so much to discuss. You need a group. Now, I want to be clear about something, that there shouldn't be an expectation if you are a writer of color, you should not need to write about racism. But some choose to. And Toni Morrison, whose incredible skill in some of her works, she chooses to address racism directly. But we don't want to limit the artistic vision. All right, so we have given out, there are 3 wonderful volunteers in this audience who are holding pieces of paper with quotes from other writers that consider racism or the power of literature to help open up our minds. Would one of those that's holding that piece of paper be willing to read that now? Nice, big voice, please. Thank you.
I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hate so stubbornly is because they sense once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with pain.
Who's the writer?
James Baldwin.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. All right, there's somebody else who has a quote in their hands. Thank you very much.
That art, it means awareness of our own life, means also the awareness of lives of other people. Was dyed for the writer, no less than color for the painter. It is a question not of technique but of vision. It is the revelation of the uniqueness in which the world appears to each one of us. A difference in which, if there were no art, would remain the secret of every individual. Through art alone are we able to emerge from ourselves, to know what another person sees of the universe, which is not the same as our own. From Marcel Proust, Interrogating.
Thank you so much. Lucky you.
Whence all this passion towards conformity anyway? Diversity is the word. Let man keep his many parts, and you will have no tyrant states. Why, if they follow this conformity business, they'll end up by forcing me, an invisible man, to become white, which is not a colour, but the lack of one. Must I strive towards colourlessness? But seriously and without snobbery, think of what the world would lose if that should happen. America is woven of many strands. I would recognize them and let it so remain. From Ralph Ellison, The Invisible Man.
Thank you so much. Thanks all. It's beautiful. I had a lot of quotes. I had to make choices. Reading is usually considered a solitary activity. In your own interaction with a great work of literature, your mind is fed, your imagination opens up. And sometimes that book reaches into you and illuminates a dilemma, a wound, a struggle from your own life. When you take those insights and experiences and put them alongside those of others, the conversation just explodes and the insights grow. In a discussion of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man that this gentleman just quoted, we were talking about one of the parts where the narrator experiences terrible punishment at the hands of the whites in the book. And there was a man in that group who was white, and he was feeling really uncomfortable being white in this discussion. And he started to give voice to this discomfort, how unfair it felt. And then he paused. Wait, that's it, isn't it? That's what it feels like to feel judged for your skin color. Ralph Ellison knows. The final line of his incredible book is, "Who knows but that on the lower frequencies, I speak for you." Race is a construct. There is no scientific veracity to the notion of biological races. Yet racism is nourished by that idea. And once we have an idea of separate races, we start to build a hierarchy, and thus the path to white supremacy is built. We all need to work together to dismantle this construct. If we don't, our political agendas, our national discourses are going to continue to be infused with fear, hatred, and ignorance. Go and read these books. Find people to discuss them with. Open up your communities. And let's dismantle racism, one book at a time. Thank you.